People who've gotten their bosses fired. How? The CEO publicly praised me for completing a task that my boss had struggled with. So my boss retaliated by forwarding all of his tasks to me in an effort to overwhelm me with work. I actually found his job pretty manageable, which the CEO also noticed and fired him, giving me his job and office. Mayo. MVP is the CEO who actually noticed. He grabbed the back of my neck and said, "If you ever say I'm wrong in front of a customer again, I will beat your ass." I went to the GM and told him, and my supervisor was relieved of his duties about 5 minutes later. It was my supervisor. It got to the point that I had decided to quit. I had my resignation letter in my purse, but decided to let his boss know why I was quitting. Supervisor would talk about all the people on our team constantly, but only behind their backs. I got so sick of telling him to cut it out. My husband and I happened to work at the same place, different departments, and my supervisor would make sexual comments about threesomes with him. What hotel we picked for our afternoon delight? It like that. It was so bloody uncomfortable. Apart from this, he spent most of his supervising time outside smoking. Problem was, supervisor was one of the guys and I was the only girl. Turns out his boss was disgusted. Told his boss, who lost his mind. They started an investigation which took 3 days. They interviewed staff. They corroborated what I said. They checked the security cameras. Saw he was spending most of his workday outside smoking. And was fired. When he was told, he guessed, wasn't hard, that I was the person who complained and tried to get to me to apologize that I took it the wrong way. The best feeling was my co-workers surrounding me as he was wailed out. That was a lovely ending to it all. My boss hired me at a surprisingly good salary, and got me 2 raises in the first 5 years. When the work slowed down to our department, he defended all his employees to management. They fired him the same day they fired me. Was working maintenance at an ice rink. The rule for anyone who knows how an ice rink works is if the Zamboni doors open, you get the duck off the ice. Some dickhead decided to ignore the fact that they were open and that I was standing in the doorway, and decided to rip off one last slap shot. The puck bounced off the glass and hit me in the head. I was okay, but reported it to my boss, because we have to fill out an incident report for things like that. The boss asked, "Are you okay?" I said, "I feel okay." Then he responded with, "Well, we don't really have to report it then, do we?" I reminded him of the protocol, but it was clear he didn't want to do it. Since he wouldn't do it, I sent a descriptive email of the incident up to the administration, because I felt there should be some sort of documentation paper trail in case, God forbid, I ended up having a brain hemorrhage or something a few days later. The boss was fired by my next shift. I took a cell phone video of her taking money from the safe and putting it in her wallet. I knew she was doing it, and I also knew that the moment it came out that money was missing, she'd blame it on me. She was so stupid that she didn't realize she should stop doing that while I was standing 10 feet away with my phone out and facing her. Phoned him to tell him I won't be at work for the rest of the week as my mum is terminally ill in hospital. The next day, about an hour after she passed away, he phoned and asked why I wasn't at work. I just hung up on him so I wouldn't say anything that would get me in trouble. The next day I sent the area manager a WhatsApp message explaining what he'd be done and attached a video of him breaking the freezer door while having a tantrum, which cost the store nearly £5,000 in lost stock and the repair costs, which he told the AM it broke on its own. He got fired that day and I got 2 weeks off with full pay. Not my boss, but I helped my friend get her boss fired. He was a general manager, and always grabbing her sides, purposely scheduling her to have shifts alone with him, asking her for nudes, asking her to sleep with him, etc. She reported it so many times to the owner, big boss, and they said they couldn't do anything because they hadn't seen it and had no their reports other than her account. So I called and complained as a customer about how I witnessed him being creepy to her and how it made me uncomfortable. For the most part true, lol. I just don't shop there. My manager wanted to prove I'm slacking off so he could write me up. So he watched CCTV footages, then wrote, printed out and signed a detailed 17 pages worth of Word document. What did I do in the past 2 days? With timestamps, like 7:59 arriving, 8:01 speaking with coworker A and B, 8:07 sitting down to my desk, etc. He told me that he's not happy with my work ethics if I won't improve my efficiency. I'm for it. I took the papers and showed to his boss and told her that I'm not happy with my manager's work ethics and his efficiency might be better if he wouldn't watch 17 hours of CCTV footages to spy on an employee. She was terrified. It would have been a rock solid lawsuit for me. But I love my job, and we had to search for a new manager. Also, my salary raised. I took a phone call on my cell when at my desk. Middle manager came up and screamed at me, yelling about how I was not allowed to take calls for clients while at that office. I was a contractor and made it perfectly clear that I did work for multiple clients prior to doing work for this company. The CTO's office was 10 feet from mine. He came out and stood in his doorway listening to the rant. When the middle manager was done, I just looked over at the CTO and said, it's him or me, and at the moment I don't give a duck which you pick. CTO walked the middle manager out right then. Funny thing, I didn't hang up throughout the incident. And it was my wife on the other end. I was spending about 70 hours a week at their site digging their staff out of a hole they had dug themselves in. I left my last company due to a bully of a GM. Many people were leaving over him, causing problems. Being sexist, racist, doing things people could easily sue them for, claiming sexual harassment. List goes on. Everyone informed HR during their exit interviews. Hell, he even tried to make my exit interview not happen. Though they still weren't doing anything. I had been at my new job for a couple months now and was still getting complaints from my old team almost daily. So I made an email account and named concerned company name crew. Sent an email to everyone who had an email account within the company explaining what he still did with events spanning from his start to the day prior. They fired him within the week and my old crew thanked me. Basically said I'm quitting because of X. Boss looked at me and said, can I convince you to delay this by a week? Worked from home for a week. Then she, X, was gone. Worked there for 5 more years. Then 7 at the company that acquired us. One summer I volunteered to help a conservation society in East Africa. The aim of the project was to educate the local rural population about poaching and to get them to help us stop it from the ground up. Anyway, I was staying with the lead ranger and his family, and on numerous occasions he served us meat that I'm 100% sure was poached. He tried to tell me that it was pork. But it was dark and gamey with lots of small bones. I think that it was small antelope like dik-dik or duiker. When I returned to Nairobi, I mentioned to my grandpa, his boss's boss, that we'd eaten some odd meals. He investigated and found out that my boss had a poacher friend who was selling him illegal meat. He was fired. I didn't feel guilty. Poaching is awful. He was such a bulleter. All talk. He yells at me one day for failing to do some task, which got done anyway because someone got a hold of my boss. They only needed a mailing address I forgot to give them. Meanwhile, he's over at his buddy's house looking at his new boat. Pissed me off, so I called his boss and told him all the work that gets done out of this office is me. Twas a long talk with him. But Big Boss said he had a feeling that was what was going on. This obviously wasn't the first time my boss was slacking off. But him giving me it when he wasn't even in the office was the camelback straw. Boss didn't get fired, but left shortly after. Was an awkward couple of weeks. Big Boss ended up writing me a nice recommendation letter when I changed positions. Not fired but demoted. I got fired and explained in my exit interview how the reason I wasn't making progress on my project is that I had no idea what I was doing. I was never trained. My WFH boss in another location took off for 4 hours a day to run errands and go to the gym. etc. They checked my story out and ended up demoting my boss, taking her off the project, and taking away all her direct reports. In college I worked in a takeout restaurant just off campus. and we were all employed by the school. I was 17-18 years old, back in 2007-2008, and my boss, the manager, was a 40-something creeper. Hitting on me, touching me inappropriately, trying to massage my shoulders, tickling me, putting his hands on around my waist, despite me asking him to stop. Then he friended me on Facebook. I declined. And suddenly my work schedule was changed. I was on shift during hours when I had class. And when I explained that problem, I got taken off the schedule altogether. I told the assistant manager what was going on, which I was explicitly told by the manager not to talk to the assistant, and he reported what was going on to upper management. Boom. Manager was fired. I worried for a while if he was going to come after me for that.